Welcome to Reflections on Now, a podcast brought to you by City Church, where I, Cody Jensen, an artist, sit down with two of our pastors here at City Church, our lead pastor, Matt Nelson, and our teaching pastor, Rachel Sanders. And we talk about what is going on in the world. We reflect on now, whether that is culturally in headlines or what is going on in our world right now. Today, I thought it'd be fun just to jump into, what are you guys reading, watching, or listening to that you'd like to share?
Rachel, you're up.
Yes. I love starting with something fun. I feel like we're like crazy heavy most of the time because our world is hard. I am a big rewatcher. How do you guys feel about rewatching things? Do you like to rewatch things, or are you like always got to be something new?
I lean towards something new, but there are seasonal things, Christmas stuff I'll come back to.
Okay.
And then I have a few like favorite rom-coms that I can come back to.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of indifferent on it. I'll rewatch some things, but most things I need something new. Something that's going to keep my attention.
Okay. So the fall to me is a rewatch usually season because it's so busy a lot of times like in my life. And so when things are busy in my life, I like to rewatch shows because I don't have to be as invested.
You already know what's going to happen.
I already know what's going to happen.
You don't need something new.
I'm
not
on the
feel
edge.
Things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
It's a comfort thing. So like comfort shows are big for me in the fall. So I just restarted Gilmore Girls, which is like, I don't know, probably the 5th or 6th time. I mean, genuinely through that because I just finished Frasier, rewatched that. Parks and Rec is also a big, rewatch thing. But I just started Gilmore Girls again because it's fall, and all of my gals out there that watch that will will know and appreciate that.
We just rewatched Frasier as well, so I'm on that train.
Yeah.
Frasier gets stuck. The writers of Frasier, I say this to Lindsay all the time, they get stuck in this cycle where he just sabotages his life every episode.
Yes.
And like, it takes them seasons to get out of it, and it frustrates me to death. So I'm over it. You're like a psychologist. Stop sabotaging yourself. Like you need, you need
better
therapy.
than this. Yes, exactly. New things, and the Great British Baking Show is one of my favorites too. And it's like it just finished a new season and a new episode. It makes you wait, and so a new episode comes out every Friday. And so for my Sabbath, like Friday mornings, like I try to like stay in bed and then I'll watch the new episode of the British Baking Show in the morning once everyone's gone and get everyone to school. So that's kind of a new thing. And I also really like The Diplomat. It's kind of a show on Netflix. It's new too. A new season just came out. So that's a new thing. So those are some of mine. I'm also not reading anything right now other than school stuff. Yeah. So I can't like read for fun necessarily. Some of the reading that I'm doing for school is fun, but no fun reading right now at this present moment.
Just want to apologize to our girly listeners that we don't jump into the Gilmore Girls talk and have the long conversation.
Guys.
I have nothing to offer.
Come on.
Nothing.
Yeah. I've seen some episodes of Gilmore Girls, and I do love the like Aaron Sorkin-esque, like fast-paced dialogue where it's just like
so fast. Yes.
There's no way this could even happen in real life, but they just nail that.
And just all of the pop culture reference. I mean, there's just so many like, yes.
All I know is about Gilmore Girls is my wife pauses it when I walk into the room because she says, if you're sticking around, I'm turning it because you're going to make fun of this.
Don't you judge us. Exactly. When Bodie walks in the room, he's like, this again? Like, get out.
Yeah. Have you guys been watching The Lowdown?
Nope.
Highly recommend. So The Lowdown, it's on Hulu, but it is a Tulsa show by Tulsans. I would say even for Tulsans. But it's a national show, but it's written and directed by Sterling Harjo, who did Reservation Dogs and local Tulsa guy, starring Ethan Hawke. And the story is it's a fictional story, but based on a real guy. And the real guy was the editor and writer of you guys remember This Land magazine? They had that building on Peoria. Yeah. So that guy he called himself a truth historian, but he was a journalist, and he is the reason that we no longer call the Brady District the Brady District, and the Tulsa Theater is now the Tulsa Theater instead of the Brady Theater.
Yeah.
And he's the reason that we are exhuming graves on that at that cemetery over on 6th, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's about, he's the main character, a fictionalized version of him in a modern day kind of retelling. But it is so fun because it's a great show. I think if you didn't know anything about Tulsa, you would still think it's a great show. But if you live in Tulsa, it's like a must watch because it's filmed here and based here. And so like a lot of it is filmed at 6th and Peoria, and almost every single shot you're like, oh, I know where that is. I've been there.
That's cool.
I know a lot of people, I'm sure if you're connected at Tulsa, in Tulsa at all, there's probably going to be at least one person who you're like, oh my gosh, I know that person. Because so many Tulsans have played background characters and acted in it. So that has been really fun.
I didn't even know Ethan Hawke was a Tulsa until recently. Like his kids go to school where my kids go.
Yeah,
So
he's not a Tulsan. They live in Brooklyn, but because he was on the show for 5 months filming, he brought his kids with him and put them in school
is that
here.
what it was?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So after they wrapped, they moved back to Brooklyn. But yeah.
And so is it like a limited series, like drama type situation? Okay.
Yeah.
It's not like multi-season. There's not more coming.
The last episode just came out last week.
Okay.
And I think it's 9 episodes. I might be wrong on that, but
Okay.
I haven't watched the last one yet. But it's super fun. One of my favorite like deep cut Tulsa joke is he got a divorce, and he meets up with his ex-wife, and he's like, hey, I got a new house. And she's like, oh yeah, where's it at? And he's like, it's in Brookside. And she looks at him skeptically because he's super poor. And he's like, well, I mean, you have to drive through Brookside to get there.
Yep.
It's like,
he lives by our church.
yeah.
You're in the ghetto.
I laughed so hard at that. It's such a deep cut where like not even every Tulsan would get that joke, let alone like people who are just watching wherever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so well done, so well made. Just like so like almost all the music in the show too is like local Tulsa musicians. The people that you see playing, because there's a couple times where you see people playing music. Those are guys who play at Mercury Lounge all the time, and it's like the soundtracks in the credits are Tulsa artists. So yeah, that's super fun. Recommend.
Yeah. That's great.
I'm in a little bit of a rut with shows, but also in the fall I like to watch. I don't have a lot of free time anyway, and when I do, I like to watch college football. So reading wise, I'm in the middle of a book about a 19th century woman named Phoebe Palmer and her influence on American revival movements and also Methodist movements, and somebody like who really went under the radar, and yet like her life just had a huge impact. So working through that, and then just finished a book called After, which Dr. Bruce Grayson writes a book. He is the leading voice on near-death experiences. And so it's kind of a book that like is your consciousness, is it limited to the human brain, or is it something that continues beyond after death? And so they go and they take thousands of these individuals who've had near-death experiences, and they track are there similar experiences? What are the experiences they go through? And it's pretty remarkable. You know, it's not a Christian book, and I don't know if he's a Christian or not, but from our perspective, just what you can glean from it. So not giving the whole thing away, but Dr. Grayson opens the book with him being a psychiatrist at a university hospital working. And there's a woman who comes in who's overdosed on drugs. Her roommate has brought her. And the roommate doesn't even know this girl very much. They've only been roommates for less than a month. And she's, going through, she's non-responsive. They have her in a room, but they're stable. She takes the roommate, Dr. Grayson takes the roommate into another room and begins to question her, like, hey, do you notice anything going on? Does she have a drug problem? Yada, 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 all these things. And she doesn't know much about her. So the next day, Dr. Grayson goes in, and the patient, the young girl who was out the whole time, is now awake. And he introduces himself, and she says, oh, you met me yesterday when you walked into the room because you were asking my roommate all of these questions. And Dr. Grayson was like, well, that wasn't in this room. We were down the hallway in another room. And she actually not only verbatim said exactly what they said in the room, because she said that she could see all of it, but she also noticed that Dr. Grayson had spilled spaghetti on his tie, which he had put inside of his white jacket and buttoned his jacket because earlier that day in the cafeteria, he had spilled spaghetti sauce on his tie. And it was one of those moments where he's like, I can't even think about this right now because I can't explain any of what just happened, but he was just absolutely freaked out. And then he goes and he begins to study other near-death experiences where people have left their bodies and can see and hear things. And when they come back into their body, they know things they shouldn't know. They've seen things that you can't explain. And it just happened over and over again with people that they would, and a lot of these people would experience the exact same thing, and they would come back absolutely transformed individuals. Like all their fear and anxiety were gone. They wouldn't fear death at all. They began to wait for the day, because they wanted to go back to that place. They were actually disappointed that they were forced to come back into their body. So it was really fascinating. We use it in the context of our study of just a class that we were in of talking about consciousness and the brain and just the complexity of it all. So,
was there any part of that like what was a big takeaway for you, or anything that like I hadn't thought about this before, but now a paradigm shift of any way? Or
I think, honestly, it's one of those moments where, the scientific data kind of supports what we believe about the afterlife and knowing that there is a place. And so these people are experiencing parts of that, and then they're pulled back into, their body. And again, it's not like 100% of people said the same things, but it was amazing the percentage of them who were put into a study where they didn't know what other people had said, and they described the same scenarios. And so what's amazing is they took those same several thousands of people, and I thought this was fascinating, and they actually traced their life for the years after that near-death experience, and all of them had a significant shift in the way that they lived, their joy, their lack of anxiety, fear over things, the way that they felt like more connected to the people around them. Like some of them didn't even they still don't have a rubric or like an understanding of what it all meant. They just knew that it transformed their life in some way, which is fascinating.
Yeah. Have you guys ever like had a near-death experience? Have you ever felt like, or been in a situation or hurt enough or whatever?
I've almost died.
Okay, I think that's
but there's a difference between a near-death experience and because that's a specific thing, like with its own definition of like heart stop, brain activity, like
right.
Oh, not there.
Yes.
But I do have the story of me falling off of a 4-story tower and
yes.
blacking out, and then waking up, and I'm only 15 feet down, wrapped around an I-beam with no explanation of how I'm not dead, which did change my life and made me think about things a lot differently.
I got nothing.
Yeah.
Yes. I have one where I genuinely thought, oh my gosh, I might die, but like it's more funny than it is anything now. And I don't think it necessarily changed my life. But, when I was like sick with COVID, I was just like so sick, and I went and got like an IV. And later that night I had this like experience that like every pore in my body. Anyway, I thought I was having a reaction to whatever was like pumped inside of me, because I was kind of like not really with it. And I legitimately thought I was dying. And my household was like just starting to feel a little better. And they were playing some music in the kitchen loud, and they could not hear me like yelling for help. I thought I was dying. And so that like literally it was only like a few minutes. But I genuinely thought, I think I might be dying. It's funny now because I'm like in the bathroom screaming for them, and they're dancing in the kitchen completely oblivious.
Yeah. Go on.
I was thinking at the end of this is probably way I don't even want to get into this conversation because I'm not smart enough to keep going with it. But the end of the book, he leaves everybody with a question. And so through all these near-death experiences, a lot of times people can begin to experience and see things that they normally wouldn't see, and it's almost like they're out of body. There's so many instances where somebody was bleeding out in a car wreck and they were actually able to be like hovering over and hearing everything, like verbatim, the words that were said by the IMSA drivers and all these people. But he asked the question, he says, is it possible that what the experiencers call the spiritual world is not a different physical location, but rather a different aspect of our familiar world that we normally don't see?
Mm.
So could it be that it's not that we're taken somewhere else, but that we are able to see the realities that right now are veiled or we're kept from seeing because of our limitations?
Right.
But when those limitations are removed, what do you experience? And then, in the Christian world, we do believe that once we die here, that our spirit goes to a place and our body is dead, but one day our bodies will be alive and be resurrected and they'll be united. And so maybe that reality of a future eternity is not someplace else, right? But it's more the fullness of what we don't see now, And so he's asking these questions based on this data, which I thought was intriguing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I very much relate to and agree with that. It's something here and now, and I've had experiences in my life of that. I'm not at the edge of death, but I have come to, in moments of deep meditation, had where the egoic self that keeps me in this material world fell away for a moment, and I felt as though the veil was opened and able to see and commune with something even more true and real than what I experience in my everyday life. Mm. And that makes me feel, that the spiritual is here and that heaven is now, and it's just us getting out of the way to see it. It's always here. But it's just the hard work.
Paul in 2 Corinthians 12 talks about a guy caught up into the third heaven, but then he goes on like everybody kind of knows what that is and doesn't describe it anymore. And so we're all left.
Yeah, you got this, guys.
Yeah. Is that a vision, a trance? Is that some sort of, but there's revelations and visions. And so, and so much that we don't know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As you were reading the book, did you have any thoughts or shifts of what consciousness is, and any kind of growth in that area?
Yeah, he determines by what he's studied and seen that, there's a distinction between the physical brain and the non-physical mind.
Right.
And obviously the brain lives or dies with us, but the non-physical mind goes on. That's what was seen over and over again. And so, which again resonates with what we believe, mm-hmm. of that, we are soul and spirit, and that our spirit goes on to live beyond just this life. And so that's the parallel you see in all of his discoveries. And I think at the end of the book also he asks some really good questions that he kind of leaves you just pondering about, that he doesn't even try to seek to answer other than through here's the data that from hundreds of stories,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That makes me think about a philosophical quandary that I think about often, that you have been, I'll use myself as an example. I've been living my life for 37 years, and for 37 years, I'm only 36. I gave myself a year.
It's hard once you get older.
Remember. So for 36 years, I have been telling this story of Cody Jensen. And from as long as I can remember, this body, when people see it, they call it Cody Jensen. They call me Cody Jensen, and I have this continuity of life that I've been continuing, that I was born in Indian, Oklahoma, et cetera, and then now, today, I'm sitting at this table with recording this podcast. Let's say Cody Jensen leaves this podcast, gets in a wreck as I'm leaving, and I have a massive traumatic brain injury, and I lose that entire story. I wake up, I have no memory of who Cody Jensen is. I don't remember the story that I've been telling for 36 years, and that never comes back. And I because people associate this body with Cody, they may still call me that, but a whole new story starts, a whole new personality starts, a whole new life. Am I the same person?
Yeah. I've heard that used. In fact, it's so funny because a couple weeks ago, one of my professors, he used the same scenario, but talked about, if you had a brain transplant, yeah. Does that become are you the same person or do you become a different person? He wanted everybody to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your answer?
My answer was that your brain is not the primary identifier of who you are. It would be more of the soul spirit. Because again, I think the brain is limited, but also we live in a world that I think elevates the brain and rational thinking in our mind to the highest value, and that determines who a person is. I don't think humanity's always seen it that way. I don't think I think I would argue that, I think I could argue that scripturally, not directly, but indirectly. I think I could argue that, but it's a good question.
Yeah, for me, it's because it's not a brain transplant. I have the same brain. It's the mind that shifted.
Right.
Because it's the same brain firing the same chemicals in the same neurons, but I lost my story and it started over. Cody dies in that moment because Cody is a story, a continuity of life story. And if it ends, then my life ends and I die. But a new person is born in the same body, in the same brain, and lives out their life with their own memories. But we have a shared eternal spirit and soul that lives on forever as it's been eternal since the beginning. But ultimately, the story that I am is temporal, but my animating spirit is eternal.
This is a Grey's Anatomy storyline. That's what I was thinking while you were talking.
If you need a rewatch,
yes.
Grey's Anatomy.
That's another rewatch of mine as well.
Yeah. I was married for 12 years, so I did see almost every season of Grey's Anatomy.
Okay, yes.
We need The Pit season 2 is what we need.
That is what we need. It's coming.
Is it?
Yeah. It's all around 4th of July. The day of 4th of July is what
4th of July? That's forever.
Well, no, I don't mean it's releasing on that day. I mean, that's the storyline of the TV show. You know, it's like a 24-hour, it's on July 4th. That's what I heard. I don't know if that's true.
Rachel?
About a personhood?
Yeah.
Oh.
We're still on this?
We didn't get Rachel's
I thought
answer.
we moved on.
Oh, no.
I mean, I'm with you guys. I was legitimately thinking about Grey's Anatomy the whole time. But I think that's what I was thinking, both Grey's, and then also what makes a person a person. It feels like it's still intrinsically you, but obviously, with so much changed, but it's just a new branch of your story, especially with the community around you, because the community around you can retell your story back to you, remind you, even if you don't remember. There's so much of we would be fighting to keep those versions of you and reintroduce. So I think that there's so much of that would be at play as well, the community side of it. But I mean, that's definitely one of those deep questions.
The Cody story does continue, but it's an external story now versus I live the internal story of that. And it stopped. It created a new chapter that's the only chapter I remember, but everybody else remembers the external.
Yes. I mean, that is obviously an extreme version of this, but even in the marriage class that we're teaching right now, we talk about when you've married long enough over seasons, you have to relearn each other, through stages of life or having kids or big health crises or whatever the case may be. You deeply shift and change as a human, as a person. And there has to be a commitment to the relearning of each other and the commitment to grow and change. I think that happens on micro levels as we grow and change too. So yeah, I mean, obviously that's a more extreme version.
How many Bodhi's have you had to learn?
Oh man. I mean, he'd probably say the's been more Rachels.
I was about to say
I'm
that.
still the same.
Thing.
She's the one that's changed. I'm just trying to keep up. which is probably true.
Yeah. I feel like I I am a new person every 18 months or so. I'm just like, I'm always changing.
You are, but you've been way more consistent over the last several years. The earlier Cody was still, I think, trying to find himself and prove himself a little bit, like we all do.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of reinvent yourself quite a few times early on, but you've been pretty consistent. I mean, you still like to do new things, but you've been the same person now for a while.
Yeah, I definitely have a consistent through line of things.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I always keep you guessing.
That's true. That's true.
I feel like I have changed a lot too. I mean, I think about younger Rachel, and I mean, we laughed about it, but my husband would definitely agree. I mean, I think there's always those through lines, but I feel like, I look back and, man, deeply formative things have changed me over the years.
I mean, I feel like looking at you, Matt, that that's one of the things that we admire about you is your consistency in self.
That I'm boring and I don't change.
No, but you do. We have seen the change, but it is like the slow work of Christ in you, and like you living that out in front of us. But your through line has always been consistent.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm definitely not the kind of person who makes drastic changes in my life. I'm not wired that way. Like if I'm going to change something, you'd probably see it coming for a mile away, right? Because it's going to be pretty progressive and slow. And I mean, City Church has been the same way. We're very different even 16 years now than we were when we started. But if you were here all 16 years, it wouldn't feel like,
right.
Yeah, it would feel like it was like a slow progressive.
Yeah. I agree with that too. I mean, mostly a few different things, but I think like motherhood. I mean, that's just like such a huge, I mean, having Ella just changed. I mean, how can it not? But I mean, I think just it really did deeply shift and change. I think, dealing with postpartum depression and all that afterwards, like that was just that's a huge marking moment where it was like, oh yeah, I'm a different person now. And I really don't know what to do with this. It was one of those moments.
Yeah. But that is a segue into kind of what I was wanting to ask next. We've already basically started the conversation, but we're currently in our City University classes, and each of you are teaching a class. What is something in the first couple weeks that has come up in the marriage class that kind of has shifted, or that you're curious about, that you've been thinking about, or anything like that?
I think one of the things I've been chewing on that we talked about in marriage class didn't originate there, came from, seminary. And one of the things in one of my classes that I'm talking about right now is our confessional theology versus our functional theology. What we confess to be true about God, what we know in our minds to be true about God, versus how that actually plays out, like what our actions, functional theology is how we actually live. And so we talked about that a little bit in our marriage class last week, of like, because the whole first, week is really like setting the foundation of what is marriage, going back to, Genesis 1 and 2. And you're in a room full of people who have heard this multiple times before, who can probably share most of what we're sharing. Like, we confess this, we know this. This is our confessional theology, but how functionally do these truths that we believe about how God designed marriage, the covenant of marriage, the husband and wife relationship, we can say all we want to say, but how does that inform our actions, and what's our functional theology behind covenant? We can say the things, and so I think like digging into that, I mean, that's a whole conversation about all the things, but
I mean, covenant sounds great when you're preparing, but what do people do in covenant when things go sideways, right?
Yeah.
Or when you're not happy, or there's been all those things. We don't live in a covenant society. So so many things that when we look at our actually Christian behavior and what we value, and how misaligned that obviously is so often.
I think that particular grid, we were talking about it in the format of marriage, but even just in that, having that language, I have been thinking about that so much, in my life, and just everything of like, okay, what do I know to be true? What do I confess to be true? And how does that actually play out in my life. I believe this about God, but actually I am all spun up and anxious and like tight-fisted and, all this, because this, my functional belief really is that I'm doing this, or that I'm in control, or that if I do this, that, and the other, this, that, and the other is going to happen as a result of that. And so it has really been kind of a constant grid for me over the last couple weeks, just really been chewing on it.
We often talk about that whenever you're preparing for a sermon or a class like this, that you have the practical lessons pop up.
Yes.
to get, if you're teaching about patience, you're going to get plenty of opportunity for patience. As you've been working on this marriage class, have we had some opportunity
100%.
for growth?
Yes, there has been some
To
opportunity
display the fruit of the Spirit
Yes,
with your spouse.
Yes, literally, like I think 2 weeks. It was at least 2 weeks before we started the class, because it was like long enough away that you're just not like constantly on your mind. But I had like a month before said something jokingly to Bodhi about that. I'm like, just a heads up, this marriage class is coming up, so we need to be. And then, a week and a half or so later, like we're in the middle of an argument or something had happened the night before, and the next day, like, Bodhi like sends me a text. He's like, "Hey, remember we're teaching marriage class?" I was like, "Yes, exactly."
Oh man, there is nothing worse than having to stand up in front of people when things are not where they need to be in your own marriage. And then, I mean, you want to talk about just feeling hypocritical, but then imposter syndrome,
Yes, yes.
oh dear God.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know my husband, which most of you that are listening know him, we're going to talk about it. He's going to spiral into talking about it. And I'm like, okay, we're being vulnerable. We're doing this. This is really where we are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Matt, as you're doing Christian worldview, has anything been coming up in that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm co-teaching this with Jonathan Gates, and he's doing all the heavy lifting for me, which I really appreciate, since I'm in a very content-heavy time in my life where I have so much content to create. The week one was really our meta-narrative, getting back to our grand story rooted in Genesis 1, 2, and 3. But then last week was really a little bit more just the timeline of how did we get to this place as a culture. And every time we do that, even leading up over the last 500 years, and then we begin to look over the last 150 years, how the evangelical church got to this place. How did we begin to value certain things as a culture? When did the politicization of America begin, where things, where that became a lens now, where there became this mix of, Christianity and kind of this nationalistic ideology, and how did we get to this place today where you have this blend and mix of secularism and all these things. And so it gives us, I feel like it gives us so much insight into where we are, because the culture is the stream that you're in that you may not even know you're in.
Yeah.
If you've ever been in like a lazy river, it's like you don't have to do anything. You just sit back and you let the river take you. Well, you're in a river, whether you know it or not. Mm-hmm. There's ideologies that are normalized around us. And so you think that this is truth or normal because it's the world you live in. Well, here we are now taking on the kingdom of God, which is a countercultural way of living. And so many times that means like, okay, I got to swim upstream, right? And so understanding the current you're in and what it means to live in the kingdom, and then how we got here, I just think is, you can just see people like, as we're going through the timeline, and they're making the connections of like, this is why we think this way. This is why every marketing and commercial is trying to tell you that deep inside of you have everything is required and it takes for the fullness of life. And so just you need to mine that out, Mm-hmm. And so it's helped people create like, oh, this is why, right? This is why we're in this cultural moment. And then what does it mean that for us to be faithful, right? What does it mean us to be set apart? And how difficult that is sometimes. Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes when Christianity is going parallel to the stream that you're in, it's like, oh, this seems easy. And then sometimes when they're going in opposite directions, you're like, why is this so hard?
Mm-hmm. What do you think? How do you help people identify, how do we identify the stream that we're in? Or the because I think that is one of the things that can be so hard to talk about. I think we talked about this the other day, of so often what we can get rooted in is we think that we're both responding to the same information or news, and when in reality we all have our own algorithms, echo chambers that we're getting things from. We're getting fed specific things based on what we like or what we have responded to or what we hover on for an extended amount of time. And so it seems like, oh, you're responding to this headline that I am having a completely different reaction to. In reality, we're both having different responses to different information, and so how do we help people identify that one, and then just kind of figure out, okay, this is the stream that I'm in, to understand which direction to be swimming. It just feels very complicated, and I think it's it's hard to.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's for us why we would spend the whole first week, and we're trying to do something in 4 weeks that is impossible to do.
Yeah.
But we're trying to lay this foundation of the story of God. This is your meta narrative. This is the grand story that's giving your life meaning. So these are the major themes that are at play, that God specifically is revealing all throughout Scripture in the story of God, but starting in Genesis and the creation and being in the Imago Dei and co-creators with God and called to subdue the earth and have dominion over it, and then the effects of sin and what God is doing in us and through us. So we're trying to lay this groundwork that's going to give you a compass. It's it's going to at least orient you. It doesn't mean that every question becomes answered, but now we orient you the right direction. Then we come alongside in week 2 and we say, okay, what's the timeline that got us to this cultural moment? And so let's just take an example. Over the last 500 years, I would say the 2 most significant movements is post-Enlightenment, where this kind of rational thought and this kind of expressive individualism, and then this kind of postmodernism, this growing, find truth in yourself, right? So it helps us identify how we got to this kind of cultural moment. Yeah. And so I think it situates us in a place where at least we have, if somebody just spins you around and then says, now show me which way north, you're like, I have no idea. But at least we're turned in the right direction, right? And so it allows us to then faithfully wrestle through politics and sexuality and all the things that we're also going to address in this Christian worldview class through the lens of this is my story and this is where we're situated. And if I can know those 2 things, I feel like it gives us orientation, right?
Yeah.
And in a super disorienting time where there are so many different streams.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if I have a mindset of the kingdom of God, then I can go into really any situation and do my best to kind of parse out, does this fit under the rule and reign of Jesus?
Yeah.
Is this consistent with the heart of God, the life of Jesus, the movements I see through Scripture, right?
The recordings of these classes are on YouTube, and if you haven't taken the Christian worldview class, I would recommend watching all of it, but especially week 2, the story of us, of what this is, how we got here. Because, I mean, like Rachel's saying, how do we even recognize it? And I think just learning the steps, the actual history of humanity and the progressive steps that it took for us as humans here in 2025, that we popped out of our mother's wombs in a cultural context. It's you weren't plopped into a perfect Christian world. You were born into a family of origin that is made up of DNA that you then have a nature that came from your ancestors, but then the people who raised you also gave you, nurtured you to be the person you are, and they nurtured you from their cultural context of living in their time and place. And so I think that for me, it's I think it's so important to recognize you are who you are because of who birthed you, raised you, and the inputs as an adult that you put into your life, that you have to recognize that you that is why you are who you are. And then for me, it's as I have studied and practiced mindfulness and sitting at the feet of Jesus, some of my spiritual practitioners talk about this stream, and that you don't recognize that you're in a stream And maybe the first step is recognizing, oh, I'm in the stream, I'm in a current, the current is taking me down this way. That's why I think everything that I think. But also, you can grab a hold of the shore and you can actually climb out of the stream and you can actually sit on the shore and watch the stream go by. And as it's going by, you can just sit there lovingly, non-judgmentally witnessing that it's happening. And you yourself can sit with Jesus on the shore and be disciplined or discipled into love.
As I was walking through the Christian worldview timeline is when I decided to write a Substack article going back just 100 years. And this is something that honestly had kind of been like, I don't know, percolating in my head for so long that I was like, let me flesh this out. So I used several sources that I'd already kind of been leaning on and just said, let me go back to just the 1920s and trace the movements of American both politics and the American evangelical world to this point, which I, for whatever reason, I think anytime I write on this, it deeply resonates with people because people are asking this. But the whole question was, how did the church get to this place of enmeshed in a cultural war, right? And again, this is a stream that if you don't know you're in it, you just look around and you're like, yeah, my job as a Christian is to fight back against those individuals who are trying to take my way of life. And I want to defend truth, and I want to defend Christianity, and I need to defend God, and I need to defend the American way. But then again, you look back at the early church, and you look at the early church fathers and the historical, and it's like that's not what they were doing.
Yeah.
So, is it just a unique call for us in a time and place, or did we lose our story? Mm-hmm. Did it get hijacked somewhere along the way? And so, I mean, I go, into just the fundamentalist modernist divide as early as 1920s, where now all of a sudden we begin to become defensive of our faith. Now it's like I got to protect it from the scientists who are going to take our way of life. Mm-hmm. And so if you say that the world's 1 billion years old, I'm going to tell you that it's 7,000, 6,000 years old. Those kind of things. To the 40s through the 60s and the rise of Christian nationalism, World War II, this way of life that America is a chosen nation. We're like the new Israel, and we're one nation under God, and becoming American and being a Christian are now simultaneously the same thing. I think the 70s through the 90s, the moral majority and the birth of just the politicalization of America and Christianity was, I think that I look back at that time, and that was the time where the two worldviews really collided. And the leaders of that time, they really pitted it as like, we are involved in a cultural war against secularism, and if we don't fight back, they're going to take it from us. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. That's what was repeated over and over again. Mm-hmm. And so why do we get into this place now where we feel like as the church, we've got to fight, we've got to legislate the kingdom, we got to fight for those who are trying to take it from us? It's like we've been conditioned now for the last 100 years to this place. That's what
I was just thinking, like our whole lifetime before us, what I mean? That framework of defending, protecting, fighting against, I can't remember as far as like, politically, nationally, I mean, I can't remember another framework like growing up with that. I mean, that's really the only lens with which I had for that, of like fighting against the world being a huge bucket of things, but like that really
the woke people.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
We joke a lot about that word.
Yes.
So.
But I mean, I think one of my favorite, I'm going to quote you back to you, of like something that you said in a message. I can't remember specifically the message, but in your, Substack, of like, faith became defensive instead of missional. We became critics of culture instead of creators of beauty. The mission of God was reduced to protecting the truth rather than embodying it. And I mean, there's so many good things in that, but I think that like that protecting it versus embodying it is like, man, like that is just like, if we could get that, if we can put down our arms and like, what does it mean for me to embody the gospel, embody the teachings of Jesus, and understand that I don't have to be a mouthpiece, and that's not my own, like my call is to follow with everything that I have to give, with my body, with my life, to embody this.
I mean, how freeing is that too?
Yes.
Like where you're not responsible for defending Christianity. Like you just get to live in the freedom of embodying it and living it and loving well and allowing God to do his work. And I would say simultaneous, like, how do we get to this cultural moment? Because I kind of stopped in the 90s, but the consumerism that infiltrated the church, and especially not to pick on mega church, but this culture of consumerism that now we're in, led to less and less actual discipleship of Jesus.
Yeah.
Now it's like, I want it my way, and I'll make it the things that I want. So you have this political move that's growing, and you also have less and less discipleship to Jesus and actually commitment to the ways of Jesus, where now it's like background noise to this big banner of Christianity. Like it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how did we get to this moment where now we're so politicized that our Christianity looks nothing like Jesus, right? I mean, because the two worlds were already merging.
Yeah.
So here we are. Yeah. And many of us are espousing a Christianity that Christ would have nothing to do with. That not only does it misrepresent him, but I would say, I know it's heavy, but it's like spirit of Antichrist at times. You know, all under the banner of, oh, we're doing this to preserve Christianity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think the embodying lens or framework, it also instantly makes your circle smaller. Your like influence is like, okay, well, if I'm embodying it, then it shrinks that to a manageable and actually, feasible sphere of influence, where I'm like, okay, this is who I actually can touch and engage with and relationally be there for, and all the things.
Well, it's a framework. I think we've talked about this before. Any framework where your enemies become more and more and your neighbors become less and less is not a gospel framework.
Yes.
And right now, it's like everybody who doesn't agree with me is my enemy. Like, and I got to go to destroy them. Like, that's how you win.
Yeah.
When did Jesus ever do that? I mean, he came to love and to serve and to give, and even instead of fighting against his enemy, he died for them.
Yeah.
Like it's sacrificial. Like the way of power is laying down your life. That's the part that I think right now is just completely gone.
Yes.
No, we think the way of power, seizing control, making people do what the things that we want them to do.
And if that, we talked as a staff yesterday about, vision intention means. And so if our vision is a cultural war, if our vision is we have to protect, we have to defend, if that vision is that, then that makes our end result is skewed. Okay, well then that means winning is the end goal. That means like defeat of my enemy, and I define that however I define that, that's winning. That is the fruit that I'm looking for if my vision is that.
Yeah.
Which leads to Charlie Kirk being a Christian hero.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you ever read this article, I started talking about mourning the reality of Charlie Kirk's death, learning about his life, some things that I did respect his willingness to dialogue and debate, but he wasn't my hero by any means. And there's a lot in his life that I took exception to, and especially the way that he treated people that he was trying to defeat, right? If you're not in a culture war, Charlie Kirk is not your hero. If you are in a cultural war, he becomes the picture of what you want to become because he makes the left look like idiots. I said this in our class the other day. I said, if there's a transgender person in front of me and they came to discuss or debate with me, my goal is not to make them look foolish. My goal is to reveal the person of Jesus in their life. So the Spirit of God, like they know who they are, that they're deeply loved by the Creator of the universe, and that God would reveal them. So what do I get by making them look like a fool?
Mm-hmm.
What do they get? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
What would Jesus do to the outcast or those peoples on the margins? He didn't make them look like idiots.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
He says, like, the kingdom of God is yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm beating a dead horse, but the embodying thing is
Yeah.
just like, it's so powerful to,
Which that
to
can
have
make me
that
think
be your
about what you're
lens.
talking about with in the marriage class of the functional theology.
Yes,
It's like
yes.
the embodiment is the functional theology.
Right. It's actually how we live. And so I think like if we are, if we're embodying Christ, then how would he speak to other people? Like, what is his tone? How does he engage? How does he set near or afar? Or how does he draw close? Or when does he need to pull away? All of those things should be actual lenses, not just how we read, the Gospels, how we read his life, but like that should be how we live our lives. Not just what we say, not just what we do on Sundays or what we like teach or share in little snippets on whatever, but like it should actually affect, I'm living my life in a way that I hope to embody Christ. Like when they're sitting across from me, that they would feel my tone as if this is how I believe he would speak to you. Yeah. And I hope to be as close to picture as I possibly can be, humanly flawed version, obviously, but like that should inform every single thing that we are doing and how we are engaging.
The intoxicating allure and temptation of power.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a thread throughout Scripture. We get to the very end of the book of Revelation, and it's like, oh, what's the way of the lion? Well, the lion is actually a lamb. You know, I mean, John is getting this revelation of like the Roman Empire and their use of power and force. And he's like, nope, not you, not your way. Like, that's not what we do. We're people of the Lamb. So what happens whenever God calls you to a place where you're not going to be more influential and more powerful, but you may actually get trampled upon and beaten and spitten upon by those, but you do it in a heart of humility and service? Like that does not fly in our current American Christian culture. We absolutely push back on that because, I mean, we're full blown, nope, I'd rather have the way of the beast.
Mm-hmm. And instead of rejoicing and praising God in the jail cell, we're being oppressed. I'm being oppressed. Woe is me. And it's like this whole show of that my Christianity is being oppressed, and instead of following what is modeled in Scripture.
Yeah. And I think that there's this idea of you want to reign and rule now, not then. You're not doing it for the kingdom to come. You would rather rule now and want the power.
Yeah.
Because that is, I'm telling you, I mean, that's power is so, it's so intoxicating that once you taste it, I think you see in Scripture power, and I think you see money as these two things. Like once you've tasted it, the allure, the power that it has over you, the control.
What do you think? This question might not come out right, but I'm just thinking about, I think a lot of times, even in this podcast, we can kind of talk about like far extremes of the side, like far right, far, left or whatever, of what do you think the root or some of the root issues for those who are kind of in the middle and just trying to figure out, well, should we be standing up for this, that, or the other, or those like faithful questions? What are some things that are underlying that you've walked with people through of trying to figure out of like, what's the root there of that question, or what's the tendency to want to kind of like, well, what if I don't stand up for this? Am I not being like true to Scripture, or am I, waning in my like witness, or, whatever, what are some of those things in that, like trying to be faithful with it in that middle, piece?
I think it's a good question. I don't even know if this is the heart of what you're asking, but I have talked to so many people that are trying to figure out, well, do I leave the public political forums or do I engage in those?
Yeah.
Like, should we legislate or should we back out? And I'm like,
Yes.
don't leave them.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can entertain those places. I mean, this Sunday I'm preaching on Acts 17, like Paul going into Athens and like giving a context, but it's also like understanding that legislation is not our primary vehicle, right? What you're talking about, an embodiment, right? And so we think now in our, what do I have to offer? Well, I have a phone and I can sit back and I have an opinion. And so like if I just give my opinion on what people should do, or if I should go that's because we don't have flesh on flesh relationship with people. We're not embodied with other people who are oppressed, or, so we think like, well, the only thing I have to offer now is, I think that we can engage in those things. I think we need followers of Jesus in those places of office, who are committed in their life to not playing a political game that forces you to compromise and bend your ethics, to try to get things accomplished. But people who will say, regardless of how the end turns out, I'm going to stand in the place of the kingdom and embody that in the love and the grace of God, right? In the fruit of the Spirit, even if that means I lose the election, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going
Which in this landscape, you probably will.
Well, you probably will. But I'm not going to bend myself
Yeah.
to the world's standards so I can get a political office to try to make the Christian way go forward. See how backwards that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a faulty way of thinking.
The means do not justify the end.
Never in the kingdom.
Yeah.
Never. Yeah. Even if it means you lose everything and you're killed. I mean, really.
Then Christ is your gain.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the martyrs of the church. Their blood becomes the seed. It's like not everybody who does the will of God is saved. Like my life is not my own. So I'll preach if I get on this too long because I'm pretty passionate about it. But I think it's just a sign of how backwards things can get when it's motivated by politics and power. When it gets, it's like that little, the little bit of yeast that he talks about working through. Like once it gets in, it takes over, right? It like contaminates it all.
Yes. Yeah.
Like power is the contaminant that turns Christianity from the way of Jesus to the way of the beast.
I do think that there's one of the common threads that I have seen too is this like fear, like a root of like a fear of what could be, what our world could turn into. What if we, abandon, these like conservative, like beliefs or whatever, and that there's a fear of what could be, and then also, a fear of I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, a fear that I'm missing the call on my life, or the voice that I'm supposed to have. I need to speak into. There's a root of I have seen of fear, I think too.
Yeah.
What that makes me think of is power and self, and that selfish desire of wanting to making yourself larger than what you actually are, and your call larger than what it actually is, and that you are called to love, and it's Christ's job to save. And I think that I see a lot of Christians where they get in this mindset that it's their job to save people, and they get self-righteous, and they need, whether they're scared that these people are going to go to hell, or they're scared that the world's going to become this place, that they have to go out, they have to do the Lord's work with a sword, and they have to save people. And it's, for me, like I always just come back to like, your job is to love, and to love like Christ loved, and let Christ save people. And in those environments, I think that the Holy Spirit works through us. And if the Spirit speaks to you and you are obedient to what the Spirit is asking you to do, and He uses you as a tool in somebody else's becoming, amazing, hallelujah. But if He's not speaking to you, then you're just called to continue to love. And the only time you're living, what made me think about it is, people are scared that they missed it, that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Well, you're only not doing what you're supposed to be doing if you hear the voice of the Spirit in you and you disobey. and then you are missing it. But he's going to give you another opportunity, and he forgives you. But there are times where he's not asking you to do these things. That's something that is rising up out of your own selfishness, I think.
Yeah, I think that's good insight. I think that as we go back to church history will tell us often, it'll inform our current situation, like that we're always just repeating the same cycles. That I think of Christianity being this countercultural movement of people meeting in homes and loving the poor and loving the outcast and doing things that the world didn't understand, that were so counterintuitive. And then one day, this guy by the name of Constantine says, you know what? He becomes a Christian. He's the emperor of the known world, and he makes Constantinople the empire center, and the whole empire is now Christian. And that was the beginning of the end, right? The moment Christianity became an empire-wide religion based in power, it stopped being what it was called to be. I mean, isn't that amazing? And then we repeated that same cycle over again. So I would say people who feel like your way of life is gone, well, maybe that's what needs to happen, because renewal movements always come back when it stops being about power and it stops being about sacrifice again, right? So when Christianity stops being convenient, when it stops being on your terms and it becomes countercultural, when it moves to the margins, when it moves to unlovable and sick and oppressed and marginalized, that is where it has power. That's where you see revival movements.
Yeah.
So maybe if we just kind of let go of all the control, you know?
Yeah. That's good.
Something that, Rachel, you said about the fear of the snowball effect of the world becoming this thing, you know, if we don't stand up and fight for it, just made me think about the streams that we're in, and how if you are fearful of that, you are fearful of that because you were born in a cultural context where the stream you're in is telling you that if those things happen, then it'll snowball into hell in a handbasket. But if you were born into a different cultural context in a different stream that was literally the opposite, you would also think the opposite. That if we lived in a fully, like socialist country and conservative ideals were starting to come in, you would be on the same, like, oh, we have to stop this because X, Y, and Z, because that's the rhetoric and the propaganda. And even if it's not propaganda, it's just the cultural context that you are in. It's the stream that you are in that makes you fear the outcome of that, versus if you were in a vacuum by yourself looking at all of the information and facts and looking at it from an objective viewpoint, you wouldn't have that fear.
Right.
Yep.
So I'm saying if you lived in a perfect
But we
world.
don't, that's what I'm saying. So,
We live in a perfect world.
we live in a vacuum.
Yeah.
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 And I think circumstances, backgrounds, all of that, family of origin. I always do look, though, like, again, going back to the historical church, because there is a line throughout church history of men and women who I always call the remnant, who sometimes they were a small group and sometimes they were the majority, but they maintained what was true and orthodox and right. And I do think of those people throughout human history, because they're from all people groups and nations, and they were like, we're committed to the way of Jesus, and how the Holy Spirit, I think, always raised up a group of men and women to preserve. And I think everybody assumes that they're in that group.
Right.
You know?
I think that is a very disorienting thing about our world right now, is like to have so many versions of Christianity or the way of Jesus. And it is, I mean, genuinely disorienting to look out on that and be like, I am not identifying, or I'm not finding what I would believe to be true, or how I, see things or interpret, the way of Jesus or scripture in all of this. And it's like, what's going on?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the day after Charlie Kirk's death, we were at Oklahoma City church gathering thing. I mean, and almost every guy that I met from my background that I grew up in, which is, this Pentecostal conservatism, I mean, it's like he was like hero. And I'm just looking around like I don't fit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's not my version of Christianity. And it does make you think, like, sometimes you're like, all right, am I the weird one?
Mm-hmm.
Because it can be disorienting whenever you look around and it feels like it's the masses.
Mm-hmm.
It's Donald Trump can now do whatever he wants to do and say whatever he wants to say, and it doesn't even matter anymore because, like, he's our man to save our country. So, I mean, you can do the most despicable things, which he says almost weekly. We don't even care.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so normalized now.
Mm-hmm. And it can be so confusing whenever you're different than your people, like you're saying, like the Christians.
Yeah.
It's like these are supposedly people who are on my team, and I don't look anything like them.
Yep. I thought 10, 15 years ago, the thing that I would be fighting against would be secularism and this just growing kind of loss of, I thought, well, that's something, and that is, when I say fight against, that's something that's culturally a norm that we have to address. What I didn't see coming is how strong this not just Christian nationalism, but the infusion of this cultural war. This, now our whole posture is one of defensive stance as we go to win our country back. Like I don't know. I didn't think it was going to be that strong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Yeah. If you're wondering if you're in the remnant, if you have a sword, if you have an enemy, if you're trying to find somebody to take down, you're not in it.
If you have a mark on your left forearm, you've gone too far. Just kidding.
Well, I think we've chatted enough. We'll let you guys get on with your day, do other things. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully this was helpful. If you want to check out Matt's blog post, you can do that at mattnelsononline.com.
Angel just lost its wings. Sorry, go ahead.
If you want to check out the City University classes, currently they are on our YouTube channel. They will eventually go up on citychurchtulsa.com/cityuniversity. And we will see you in the next episode.